Welcome, everyone, to the 10th episode of the Ashen Forge. That is right, our 10th episode.
Yeah.
As we keep going along, I am joined, of course, by Diggs and the legendary Neurotoxin. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing good.
Pretty
Great.
good. Awesome. Not a lot of news since our last show, so we are just going to kind of pull out of the forums. I've joined Diggs. Diggs is, of course, the biggest forum rat here. Gets into fights with everyone, but not really. Maybe a little.
Kind of does. Kind of does.
I've started trying to join in, so we're just going to probably pull from, I guess, some of the things that are the topics in the forums. There's quite a bit, but one of the things that I wanted to start with that I know both of you guys have opinions about that I joined in on is this idea of solo versus group play styles. I don't want to say content, but play styles. The clearly sort of divided sections within the forums of people who encourage it, don't think it's a problem, and people who basically say, get the hell out. We don't want solo players here. You're going to ruin our experience. We don't want the developers spending time creating content for you. This is an MMORPG, and that means you must group, which is actually not correct, which I did point out on the forums. Richard Garrett actually responded to me at one point in Twitter when I had asked him about that, and he said that he coined that actually just to define, I guess, the difference between the server limits of a traditional MUD and what then became MMORPGs. Had nothing actually to do with grouping. But anyway, so that's actually where I want to start, because that seemed to be, at least in what I partook in, the bigger conversation for the last few days. There's some other stuff too, but yeah, so what are your guys' thoughts?
It's a fun one. Yeah, so I was telling Neuro just before we started that that thread has been around for a little bit. I think it started back in June, maybe. And the title in general discussion is single player content that is soloable. And I always have a problem with single player content because MMORPGs don't have single player content. You have solo content maybe, but it's not a single player game at all. And where I jumped in this time, I think it opened back up this week, is someone was saying that solo content, we should have solo content, but it should be very hard and very tedious once you get into dangerous areas. And I'm like, no, you you don't encourage grouping by making soloing difficult. You encourage grouping by giving bonuses to grouping. But soloing doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden playing a single player game or playing it like a single player game. Soloing just means you're not grouping. And there's all kinds of stuff you can do that's social and interactive with other players. Even if you're just running past people and buffing them as you run past, you're still solo and not in a group, but you're adding some benefit and there's some interaction and you're doing stuff that you can't do in a single player game. So that was my big take.
Yeah, there was definitely a big sort of, it seemed like even just the terminology, it does solo equal single player. And I think it read like you were trying to get across, no, it doesn't.
Right.
And there's just some people that can't, I guess, wrap their head around that.
Yeah.
For me, and I was saying this, we were talking a little bit about this before the show. I personally believe that in a static MMO like WoW, it's already basically a single player game, except for the content you have to play with other people. It's a static experience. Nothing ever changes. So, or maybe it changes after an expansion or two, but it's mostly the same stuff. It's still more or less the same game. So it's a completely different story when we're looking at something where it's got emergent gameplay. It's got a server that actually saves the things that you do, all the actions that you do have influence. So for something like that, a single player, a lone player, can and should be able to cause influence in the world. Now, this isn't necessarily a matter of looking at how easy or difficult content should be, I perfectly think that solo content should be an entire range of stuff. It should be the guy who, clears 10 rats every day in the sewers. That's his job. That is his civic duty. That's what he gets paid to do. It's not a great, not something you get married over, or it's like, oh yeah, I'm the rat clearer, like get me your nicest maidens in town or whatever. It's a job. It's a respectful trade. You have something that you got to do. Someone's got to take care of the rats. And that's somebody who's able to express influence doing something that probably not a very technically difficult job to do, except every now and then maybe they throw a curveball and like a couple goblins sneak in there or some other sort of creature, and you have a more difficult encounter. Maybe you have to actually retreat and get help, or you don't retreat, they take you down, and then the next time you go down there they've got better weapons and there's more of them. That's the sort of thing a solo player could be causing that much. And to that extent, again, it could be easy content, it could be difficult content, but it's the idea that they're actually expressing influence in this world is, I think, the part that's the most important. So going back to the difficulty and quality of gear and stuff, like Smeagol wasn't like with a raid team when he came across that ring. I think it was like fishing with his brother who he murdered or something. So he basically became solo after he took the agency to become murderous by the power of the ring corrupting him immediately. So that's there's definitely a lot of room for things of all levels, from the inane rat killer in the town to someone coming across the One Ring and immediately becoming corrupted by its influence.
Yeah, what I found interesting is I think it was even the same person who was saying that soloing should be in dangerous areas, should be difficult and tedious. I think he was also saying that you should be able to kill any boss if you have enough skill. And I'm like, well, see, I think that there's
Dark Souls rules.
Yeah, I think there should be a range of content that solo players can achieve, and it should be from easy to difficult depending on what their goals are. If my goal is just to sneak through some dangerous area and steal one artifact and bring it back, that might be relatively easy if I've got stealth skills to do that. But if I'm trying to kill the boss that's a raid boss, well, I shouldn't be able to do that by myself. So there should be a range of content up to where, no, that's designed for an 8-person group. I should not be able to solo that. And I certainly shouldn't be able to solo a boss designed for a raid. So it really depends on what your goals are and what you're hoping to do. But, hopefully there will be instance content that has a difficult boss for a solo player, and it's instanced so that groups can't enter that particular instance, and the whatever rewards you get are commensurate with that challenge. But that's the other thing. I also don't think that, and I don't think we aren't going to have a difference between PvE gear and PvP gear. So I don't think we're going to have a difference between raid gear and non-raid gear. But if you're soloing, I don't think you need to be achieving raid gear when there is raid gear, because you aren't raiding. So
well, okay, but I'll give you an alternative to that. If raid gear means like full head to toe equipment and the skill to use it and the attributes to use it, as well as all of the consumables that you would require and all of the like preparatory items, I don't think a person would need that just simply on the grounds of you wouldn't need to be that prepped or have that much prep. If you're getting into that deep of a situation, you're probably going to bring people. You're not going to want to do it solo. You're going to bring all that prep just to die to the first thing. That's not going to happen. So I feel like part of it's, what it means to be raid gear. But then the other thing is I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that somebody could have a raid tier item that it's just the thing that they do. It's their trade. It's their craft. Old rat killer, he's third generation rat killer. Somehow, like, did something that saved someone from some rat, some royalty, and it was this big display that happened in town square, and they got awarded this, super badass sword. So it's like, okay, I'm still going to kill rats. That's still my job, but now I've got a much better weapon to do it with. That's not necessarily being raid geared. That's just having that tier of item, that quality of item, which I believe anybody should be able to access. Now, for a solo player to go through and get, this lordly quality of plate armor and, weapons and all of that sort of stuff is, it should be a very tedious sort of thing, and the risk of going out with all of that solo should be very high if it could be potentially taken from you or damaged or rendered in a poor state just for making bad decisions and going out the doors with it. So to that extent, I don't necessarily think that raid gear, if we're saying that it's completely different than stuff that you could otherwise get that you would never get it unless only raiding is all you ever do.
Well, what raid gear was supposed to accomplish is it's supposed to allow you to stay alive from the massive damage that a raid boss is going to swipe you with in one hit, which because a raid boss is going to have tons and tons and tons of HP, and they're going to be doing super powerful hits that they're expecting a cleric to be healing you back from. If you're solo, you're not going to be interacting with a boss like that requires all those people and multiple people healing and all that kind of stuff. So you don't need that level of armor to stay alive. And so it used to be that people would say, I should be able to go solo through a raid dungeon, and then if I'm going through the raid dungeon, I should be able to get raid gear. And I'm like, but you aren't really doing raids. You're just kind of exploring a cave. But I don't think we're going to have that differentiation between gear to that extent.
Yeah, I doubt that it's going to be that massive a swing from like the highest quality mundane stuff that a crafter would be able to make or that you'd be able to find at a vendor to the highest tier of magical items short of the actual magic applied to it, whatever bonus and benefits that it provides. And if that's the sort of thing that players can actually craft and enchant and build up an item into, then getting raid gear might actually be a matter of getting the resources and supplies to make the items, less than going and actually doing the raid grind where you defeat that raid and then all the gear from that after doing it 20 times, you go to the next raid and then you do it 20 times and everyone's geared, you go to the next raid. And again, like how much of this stuff, like once a raid's been completed a bunch of times, is it going to hang around? Is it going to change? Is it, what's going to happen with it?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's just going to be gear, and everybody's going to get gear, because again, when it comes time to a siege, that's a raid, and if you're participating in this, it's going to be like siege gear, and raids are going to be coming to us. We're going to be going to raids. It's going to be a whole different kind of milieu, and we aren't going to have to group to participate in sieges. So I think it's just going to be gear, and I think people are going to want to protect their homes. So when sieges happen, when monster coin events happen and monsters start coming with their minions to destroy the town, you just defend the town.
When you talk about raids in that context, I think about raid gear being your ballistas, not, the plate armor you're wearing.
But I'm just saying, it's just gear.
Yeah.
It's just gear. And hopefully, I hope that world bosses that we get, it's not so much that they just have tons of hit points. I hope they're bringing minions. I hope they're bringing their own raids. So it's raid versus raid, not raid versus uber powerful one boss that takes 40 people just to kill the one boss. It should be 40 people needed to kill 40 fairly decent leveled mobs coming after you. We haven't heard much from Phantom though, so Phantom needs to weigh in.
I'm trying to. I'm quiet because for some reason we're getting a lot of drop frames.
Okay.
It has gone from 0.4% to 12%, and I do not know why. Anyways, I don't know if anyone can notice when they're watching, but
it was looking fine to me.
I mean, so for me, this idea of not having, I guess, solo content doesn't make sense. Part of it I feel like is because because actually in the same, when I sort of jumped in, the context was, well, I'm tired of Care Bear MMORPGs. So everybody keeps comparing it to World of Warcraft, which in that game, you largely can do everything on your own. Everyone.
Do you think that's a care? Oh no!
That's what
There's all these Korean MMOs that are coming out that are just a theme park on rails. They just like literally they hold your hand. They like handcuff you and hold your hand. It's like, here, just do this. Yeah, okay. Hey, you leveled up. All right. It's like, God, I was hoping this would be open world in like an open world way, not like, there's a big old world, but you only go through this way the entire time. That those are Care Bear like to the max.
It wasn't even really. That isn't what I was really thinking about it. I just see everyone still comparing this to World of Warcraft, which everyone essentially has the same goals. I mean, it's going to vary a little bit, but everyone experiences the same content. It's just a matter of how long does it take to get to that content, right? Everybody has the same raid goals, the dungeons are the same.
Yeah.
The crafting is very simple. And that's why everyone has so many alts. So there's still this thought process that this game is going to be like a World of Warcraft sort of game. And the feeling I get is that they don't want it to be so simple. They want people to have to group in order to so basically a World of Warcraft on steroids, where you have to, or I guess vanilla, where there was a lot of open world content that you had to group with to do elites out in the open world.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're sort of missing the point that this game is different on how it's being created, that it's not going to be like that. And there are going to, just by how they are creating the systems, there has to be some level of, everybody's just going to have different goals. And the idea that you don't want solo players in this game is mind-boggling to me, because when you have independent auction houses, you have crafting that's so important, regionalization of everything, the sieges themselves, and leveling up nodes. Well, this is not sort of a traditional MMORPG. You're going to have a lot of different needs that have to be filled in order for this game to progress like they want it to have player-driven change, player-driven creation and destruction. It's not going to be so simple as we're going to have 3 big guilds on the server and they're going to run everything. That's just not really, I don't think anyways, how they intend this game to function. So you really need these solo players to come in. And the example I gave was, I don't really care about going out and sieging a metropolis. I would be happy coming in, maybe exploring, maybe doing some combat and group things, but just really getting a freehold once I can and starting to learn the process of, I'd be content with growing crops or animal husbandry, whatever it might be. That is a solo activity, more or less, for me. But that doesn't mean I don't contribute to the community. That doesn't mean I don't, or that I take things away from the community. If anything, those sorts of players will add, because the people that are doing the sieges are going to need the supplies that the people who just want to sit in their freehold give them.
There's no such thing as a solo farmer.
And that's the other part to it, is that the big difference, one of the biggest differences, is that we're building the town, and we have to do things in order for the town to grow, just to get it to go from from a settlement to a camp to a village to a town. And so we aren't just going to be leaving the place because we out leveled it, we're going to be staying at the place to help it grow. And if I see Phantom is around growing crops, and the crops, help make food that I can eat, or maybe he's using animal husbandry to help breed mounts or pets. And I might just want to see what new pets does he have? What do the mounts look like? Even if I don't want to buy one, I still might be interested in seeing what's available. And I will run by because I know where he's going to be. Yeah. And it's open world. So when he's doing his thing, I can run by and say, hey, what are you doing over there? And he can tell me.
Yeah. Well, and that's where they I forget the name of who it was, but started off with, in an MMORPG, you have to have interaction with other players, and it has to be in groups. It's like, well, yes, you do have to have interaction with other players, but no, it doesn't have to be in groups. Right. And in that same scenario, in order for me to actually continue to thrive and grow a freehold, I'm going to have to somehow interact with somebody to buy things or transport it for me or something like that. So yes, there's interaction, but for the most part, my interactions will be fewer than others. The other thing on the same line of thought was, why in the world would you want to limit the amount of players that you have in this game? Any MMORPG, you want high numbers of high populated servers, and especially with this one, again, just in how they are designing it to work, you want a lot of people to keep the change moving. So I guess I feel like they don't really. I sense that they feel like the people who are really against solo players just have it in their mind that that's going to somehow lessen their experience in the game, and I feel like that's entirely not true.
Well, the experience that they're wanting is grouping for combat,
which they can have.
If too many people don't want to group, if they want to do their combat solo, then that means it's more difficult for them to find groups. Also, I think because for them, if it's
but why would they want to group with them? Why would they want to group with somebody that doesn't want to group with them?
But they just like to be in groups, and there aren't enough people. And one of the reasons why is because for that play style, if it's easy to solo, they will just solo it and not be in groups. If they don't have to be in a group, they won't be, which is different than that's kind of a more hardcore mentality than a casual mentality, because casual people are more likely to group for all kinds of reasons. That's not just combat. Hey, I got a costume. I'm having a costume party. Hey, come see how I decorated my freehold. And people will come and do that stuff. And again, look at all the new pets that I got. I've bred all these pets. What kind of pet do you want me to make for you?
Hey, look at all of my alts I've parked here. No, I'm kidding.
That would happen too, if that were possible.
I just feel like, why do you not want people in this game? It's better to have people solo who might choose to group with you at some time, but not all the time, than not have anyone there at all.
They want people in. They want grouping to be required.
Well, grouping has never been required in any MMORPG.
But they felt like it was.
But it was.
Back in the day.
EverQuest.
But it wasn't.
I rolled a druid.
It wasn't.
I would say EVE Online, you can never not be in a corporation. At the very least, you can, I think, be in a corporation of just you. But you have to be in a corporation. You start in one, and they expect you. So that's a game that definitely does enforce at like the lowest, the simplest level. You're in a group at all times. But you're not always in a party.
I think that's like the PvP. I'm not touching Eve with a 10-foot pole because.
Oh, you can stay in areas that are basically all PvE.
PvP centric, and if it got to be part of a group, I'm not playing that game.
But even EverQuest, so yeah, and I think the history of it. Well, when I joined, I rolled a druid. That's primarily what I was through all of EverQuest, and you could kite. I mean, that's always been there. Mm-hmm. Content that would take a group 30 seconds to kill, maybe it'd take you 3 minutes, but and it took forever to level, but it was possible. Now I think Brad would tell you that that wasn't intended, if I remember correctly, that they didn't necessarily put it in there with the idea of people would kite, but I mean, it was there. So, I mean, there's really never been an MMORPG where you absolutely 100% had to be within a group.
Right.
Are there some where it absolutely made more sense to be in groups? Yes.
Yeah, I primarily soloed as a druid in EQ, and when it felt too tedious, I would quit and wait and come back and see if it felt easier. And if they nerfed it to where it felt more comfortable, then I'd play for a few more levels, and then when it felt too tedious, I'd quit. And I used to actually shuttle back and forth between EQ2 and World of Warcraft, depending on how tedious the level got in one. And I just wait for the nerf to happen on one game and then jump to that one, wait for the nerf to happen on the other and jump back. So yeah, the tediousness doesn't make solo people group. It makes them quit.
So that was sort of one of the things that popped up. Another, just I guess, side note, which was interesting, was cartography. I think we talked about that in.
Now, hold on 1 second, because we have a thing in chat. We have a thing in chat that says DAOC.
Yeah, I saw that.
To get anything done, and I didn't play DAOC for very long, and maybe that was why.
Wasn't it mostly a PvP game?
I don't think of it as mostly a PvP game. I didn't even think about PvP.
It was more centered on that than EverQuest was, but
yeah, I didn't pay attention.
PvP. And I'm not saying that there aren't MMORPGs that it makes sense to group. I mean, if you there are that benefits you in most of them. Like you said, Diggs, that there should be a benefit to being in a group. There should be a reward. And certainly DAO, Dark Ages of Camelot, EverQuest, I mean, it made sense to be in a group if you were wanting to progress as far as level progression. That makes sense. It was never forced. And the sense I got from these posts was they wanted it to be, you had to be grouped to get anything done combat-wise. And that it was sort of like crafting and harvesting was there's your solo experience, make that easy, but anything outside of that, if you left the town, you better be in a group. And there's never been one that I can remember where you absolutely had to be.
Right. It's just that there were ones where people felt like it was so tedious to solo that you would want a group, and that's what they want to happen, is for it to push.
I didn't level my druid completely by soloing. That would have been horrible, but I could.
Yeah.
And sometimes I did kite when I didn't have a group or didn't have time to be in a group. But again, it also just comes back to the Ashes is just going to be entirely different. They're just going to be I think I forget the phrase, like links in a chain. Combat and raiding are just one of the, two links within a larger chain, and each of those links need to be strong and there for the whole game to function. So it's sort of this getting out of the mindset of World of Warcraft and even what EverQuest 2 has become.
And it's the same thing with caravans. I'm probably going to have at some point goods, because caravans have to run and successfully in order for the town to grow. So there will be times when you escort caravans probably, and there will be times that you don't do that by yourself. I mean, that's just the nature of the way the game is designed. So you don't have to force anything. It's just some things will happen. You can't build a town by yourself, so you're going to be around other people.
Well, and that's a good point too. That's the other thing that again, just to wrap people's heads around is the idea of nodes. That it's everyone is contributing in some way to the growth of that node, even through solo content or solo play. Yep. I just still don't understand why people wouldn't want every single player in this game that they could possibly get. It just makes more sense to have higher numbers of players.
Yeah. They really want them. They just want them to be forced to group. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Which One thing I kind of wanted to get off topic in that thread, but I didn't. Where they said, these popular MMORPGs are. It's like, well, there's a reason they're popular. There's a reason why World of Warcraft has so many players, and it's not because they did something wrong. It's because they did something that more people want to see.
So Pantheon
yeah.
is coming up, and I'm not planning to play Pantheon because
I was gonna say Pantheon's closer to EverQuest, where it's not a game where the world really changes based on the actions and interactions of the players with the environment. So, as far as I'm concerned, that part's it's a bit different than this discussion here, but to the extent of it, yeah. I expect that it probably will be centered around groups and, trying to basically relive the original EverQuest experience in a new way. Whether or not that's going to bring the old school players and bring new players, who knows?
I'm the only one here that's probably going to play Pantheon.
Right.
Even Saga of Lucimia to a degree, where they really are focused on group mechanics. Now, I assume at some point people will be tricky enough or shifty enough to figure out a way to solo somehow. But yeah, I mean, there are games. That's kind of what I wanted to also point out. But I figured the moderators would have kicked me since they're so quick to get people in trouble. Say, hey, there are games that exist. If you want that, go check them out. Here are the links. Anyway.
Yep.
But I mean, this is something that I've thought about going way back for years and years. That if you're going to make a game where you're going to force people to do group content, you have to give a system where at least they can fill in up to 50% of the requisite party with capable NPCs, because it's hard to get a full group. It's hard to get that one last person, whatever it is. If you need just a tank, just a healer, just a rogue, whatever it is, you just need that one person. Your buddies aren't around. You can't trust anyone else. You don't know how they roll with the loot system. There's always trouble and stuff. So instead you go with an NPC. And to that extent, I can see, if you're a solo player trying to fill in an entire group of 5 or 8 with something that's supposed to be intelligent and able to complete the content, then that content could basically be completed without you at all. They just need a driver of some sort, and AI has been able to be designed smart enough to do that on its own. That's why I say it should definitely be like a 50% sort of thing. If you've got like a 4-person content that you're trying to fill out, grabbing one person and being able to fill in with 2 NPCs is a lot more reasonable and a lot less daunting of a task to ask a solo player than find 3 people and wrangle those cats for the next 2 hours so you can complete this content.
Well, and that's actually a great point that we haven't talked about is with Ashes is 8-man groups, 40-person raids. Their numbers are higher, which I like the 40-man raids. I wish, again, there would be like 60-man raids, 100-man raids. But 8-person groups, I mean, it's hard to, how hard is it now just to fill out a 5 or 6-person group when you're trying to find people outside of your guild or immediate friends?
Yeah.
Now you have 8.
Right, and the thing...
I still don't agree with that.
Go ahead.
That's just me.
Yeah, and the thing for me is you have to think about what drives people to solo. What are the things that they don't want to have to deal with? And one of the things that I brought up my 2 different spectrums of hardcore and casual, time and challenge, and how you got a whole bunch of people who used to be hardcore time, hardcore challenge. That was like 90% of the player base 20 years ago. But now we got a bunch of people who are casual time because they got kids and jobs, and they can't sit around and wait for a 40-man raid to join.
You try to make
they
a
can't
good
camp for 3 hours.
There was a good counter to that, though, that those people are replaced by younger people. But I think the younger people have a shorter attention span.
The player base is not 90%, but the player base is not 90% anymore. You've got a whole bunch of casuals in for all kinds of reasons, and a big chunk of the hardcore are no longer hardcore time, hardcore challenge. They're casual time, hardcore challenge. And so, again, people are trying to say numbers. It might be the same numbers of hardcore, but the entire player base is much larger.
No,
and the percentage of those people are much, and that's the big thing. So, not as many people can wait around for 3 hours or 4 hours camping, or wait around for 2 hours for the group to form so that they can play for 1 hour together. And I think it's the same thing with casual challenge. Like, I'm an explorer. I want to explore the dungeon. I don't necessarily care about killing everything in the dungeon. And I don't want to be grouped with people who either want to speed through the dungeon without exploring, or who are so focused on killing that I don't get to explore. I'm not going to have fun playing with those people. I need to find people who like to explore like I do. So it's not just about even filling in classes. It's about finding compatible play styles.
For that, though, I would say the game also has to allow that sort of thing. One of the problems with a lot of MMOs is that the way the spawn system works, if you were to take your time and really explore every nook and cranny and really take the place in for the design and the quality that went into it, you're going to have respawns 2 or 3 times over in all directions. Like, you're not going to be able to make much progress just because the stuff that you just back cleared will start appearing again in short order. You're not going to be able to really go through and check everything in full detail. So I think that's one of the things I'm really hoping it'll be a bit different with this, that when you've cleared out an area, that there's kind of a sense of containment, and a sense of being conquered, that you can actually freely walk around in this area, take a rest, whatever you need to do. That it's not contested territory anymore once you've cleared it, or cleared far enough that nothing's going to be coming for you for a while.
Right. It should have some impact on the world versus resetting.
Yeah.
Within
resetting
an hour.
Arbitrarily after however long.
Yeah.
And that's the one that killed me the most, is it happening in instances. Come on. It's already separated from the world. Why do you have to make the things come back? Like, if you want to encourage farming, but people can just clear it and come back in. That doesn't make any sense. It was, to me, it was always a real terrible mechanic. And like, I think WoW is the game that I played the most where it had impact. And not cool. That's totally lame. It's just not an idea that I feel like promotes gameplay for people of all levels and all styles. And it's one of those things. If it's going to take you 3 hours to do a dungeon that takes everyone else 30 minutes to do, whatever, that's your business. You go at your own pace. Subscription-based game, you're paying your $10 a month or whatever.
And the other thing, to go back sort of to today's younger generation too, it's sort of okay, I've done my world quest now, so I think I'm going to go play some PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. And then about 30 minutes after that, well, I'm kind of bored. I'm going to hop onto Destiny 2. There's not a lot of, I'm going to sit here and play for 6 hours and grind things out. Maybe initially, but
oh no, they'll play PUBG for 6 hours.
Well, I'm just in a MMORPG setting. That seems rare versus, even when I played EverQuest, I felt like I was definitely not nearly as hardcore as like my uncle who got me in, but I still played a lot. But I just feel like a lot of attention span for that has now kind of wavered some. But we've actually spent quite a bit of time.
What was the other topic you were going to bring up?
Well, I mean, there were a couple things on the forums. One briefly was cartography. I would love to. I would love to have that skill. I think it makes absolutely no sense to try to make it sort of a launch feature unless it's very easy to do. And my reasoning being that if they try to put that as a skill that people can actually use in an economy setting, it just doesn't make sense. Because the first thing I would see people doing is taking screenshots, uploading it to a wiki, and then why would you purchase it in the game?
I feel like two elements that would make it really good. One is scale, and the other is detail and notation specifications. So if I'm going through a large area trying to kind of trace the path between two cities, I'm going to want to have a much more zoomed out view. So the fidelity that I'm going to be able to put in is going to be a lot smaller. And beyond that, maybe I don't care as much about like rocks or trees in the area so much as the actual topography. So instead of doing the topographical map where I've got the elevation lines, would be the type of map I would generate. Versus if I'm trying to explore, like, I've found this mysterious hollow in the woods and some interesting ruins around it, I would want to have a much more like tighter zoomed in map. Probably less detail on the specific trees, but at least some indicator on where they're at, so I know what areas are like the ruins and what areas are kind of blocked off by other things in the area. And the fidelity of that, once again, because it'd be more zoomed in, that same piece of paper is going to have a lot more close detail of what's going on in the area. So if that's the sort of stuff that the cartography skill would be able to allow people to do, that would be amazing. It would make sense for people to take it up as a skill and cartography the hell out of things, because you'd be generating different maps for different purposes.
Well, I think what Phantom was saying is it depends on what is it.
Exactly.
Is it a crafting thing where people like crafting armor so that people can sell their maps? I don't think I wouldn't spend money on that, because I think Phantom is right. There's going to be a wiki with the map, and that's going to be good enough for me with the mini map. I'm not paying a player money for detailed maps. Is it something that everybody can do? I mean,
even if it auto-locates your position, if you actually have the real map versus if you just look at it on the wiki, you're not 100% sure where you're actually located.
Yeah, the mini map is going to be good enough.
Yeah, I mean, we still don't really know, I guess, exactly. There's a mini map, but I guess they've not really said how they're going to do a larger world map at all yet, right?
Right.
I guess my point being is that, yes, some of the best game maps that I've seen come from players that create them on their own. So that's great. Everybody should do that if they want. And if they can put in a way for players to do that in the game that, is not too intense, it doesn't take away from other development, but adds sort of a fun thing for somebody to do, that's fine. That's great. To try to somehow fit this into, well, let's make it a crafting profession and make it somehow part of the economy. That to me it seems like a waste of time.
Right.
And that just was my greater point.
Right.
But
yeah, because I think everybody's on board with have people make cool maps. Sure, if the technology is easy to do and put it in, go for it. I'd like to see heat maps and all the different kinds of maps that we had for Revival, and I think there were several different kinds of heat maps for H1Z1, maybe. Sure.
So that was one of the things. Another one I saw that was, and I don't know how old some of these are. I think a lot of the things I jumped in on, or I've started jumping in on, have, as you mentioned with the solo versus group, have existed for a while. I think one of the newer ones I kind of stumbled on was them speculating on the AI, which, I'm not sure we've heard much about that. I think someone had a quote from Steven just saying that something generic, like it's good or we'll like it or something very generic. We
have new technology that people will enjoy was basically it, which we don't know what that...
Because the posts were like jumping into, let's, deep learning, some of these real, cutting edge, it's getting easier to do. I don't know.
And my guess is that it's going to be, I'm thinking it's going to be whatever the SOE version of story bricks that they kind of started on, because that's kind of tied into nodes anyway. It's not going to be as robust as they were wanting to do with story bricks, or even as they were planning to do for EverQuest Next. But I think they're going to use some of what they learned from playing around with that.
That would be my hope too. They've pulled, clearly they've not said this, but there's been so much pulled from EverQuest Next. Just that's clear. I'd love to see Dave Mark pop up on this somehow.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Jeff Bard wants to make sure that whatever it is not so avant-garde that it's too difficult for them to implement. So it's not going to be super out there, and I don't know if it might be able to, if it's going to be so advanced that it's going to require Dave Mark. But
that's true.
But I would love it. I would love it.
From what we know, the Storybricks never made it from paper to the code, right? I mean, they never actually even transitioned into any workable.
Well, they had some of the demo stuff, so I think some stuff was working, but especially not right within the NPCs.
No, last time I talked with an engineer. Last time I talked with any engineer about it, they basically said we could not implement one bit of the stuff that Storybricks delivered to us. So, no, I think that was an entire misfire. And to rely on such a huge piece of tech for it to not come through at all is probably one of the things that, made it not come through as a game in the end.
Well, they seem to have the node portion of it working to some degree, since they're having a similar system for Ashes.
I mean, I could think of the way AI modules could be designed that don't do anything that we couldn't have done 15 years ago, just actually going through the process of doing it and not shortchanging, the idea of a creature having 20 or 30 abilities and 50 or 60 patterns in which they use and transition between those abilities based on the type of threats that they're dealing with. It's not that we couldn't have done that in the 90s, but we just don't.
Yeah.
We're lazy.
But I think
we just need to stop being lazy.
Some of the discussions I feel like I've had with Dave Mark, he kind of says that. I mean, what was it? Utility based is what he always referred to it as, right? Utility based AI, right. And he basically said that's been around forever. I think the GDC lecture that was always referenced was from like 2010, where he was he didn't actually show a gameplay example, but the idea behind it.
Yeah.
But some of the posts were, I think they were talking about neural networks and stuff where my understanding.
Hold on one second, guys.
Something like that. My understanding was that you don't actually always know what's going to come out the other end. You think you do, but you might not get what was intended. So it was just fun.
I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that I think about is, okay, so you give them the ability to use a bunch of different tools and techniques, and what it means is that you can't just go in with one strategy and know that you're going to be able to just bowl that enemy over because okay, you've killed 3 of those enemies the same way. You dash, stun, charge thing, you enter and stun them, you beat on them a couple times, the wizards come through and nuke it, it's done. All right, so this next one, it knows that. It has an ability that actually allows it to resist one of those stun charges and kind of sidestep it. So the warrior comes charging in and it gets sidestepped. It's like, well, what the hell do I do now? So the wizard starts charging up. He charges after that wizard and smacks him. That's the sort of thing. We can give them that kind of agency. We always could have done that. We just don't.
Well, can you imagine the complaints if you could not get a rational pattern down? right?
I
We're padding
I
this,
would
so
revel in those tiers, because for me that means you just need to have, you just need to play better. You can't play like the old school games, just like I am just going to stand at 10 meters and use this ability.
I mean, that's what everybody's used to. Okay, this mob does this on at 5 seconds. Once it's at this health, it's going to do this. So I know that I need to do
No.
that.
For me, I say let it telegraph. Like, if you know that it's going to do a certain attack or it's preparing a certain defense, like it knows it wants to do a sidestep. So instead of standing square up like it normally does, it does something different. It's kind of like, a little more narrow. And when the warrior comes in, it steps back. If the warrior doesn't try to do the charge stun and just kind of walks up, then it's not going anywhere. It was getting ready for that charge. You're not going to be able to do the stun enter, but it's going to have to square back up to deal with the warrior again. It's not going to be able to do that sidestep anymore. So it's that sort of stuff. Give it the telegraph so that the players can anticipate and deal with them. Or ultimately, the other thing is, if you're getting overwhelmed by your opponent, back up. Use your dodge defense or whatever.
But so I don't want. I would prefer the AI not to have predictable patterns that we learn their rotation. But that being said, my preference would be that they have the same abilities, especially the humanoid NPCs have the same abilities and classes that we do. And because we only have 10 slots on the hotbar, it should be relatively easy to anticipate by class what abilities they have slotted in. And we'd also be familiar with their augments as well. So if we're fighting them for a while, we know kind of, just because of all the other people that we've interacted with, once we know the classes, we kind of know.
I feel like that works up to a point with intelligent humanoids, but when you start looking at beasts and other mythical creatures, then you start getting into territory where they're going to have a completely different set of abilities. It's going to be like, I would imagine if you have some ability as like a summoner to control your pet or something that you've brought in that way, that's how you would maybe have access to some of those beast-like abilities. But that would be as your summon, not as you the player.
Right. But then that gets back to, we do that in real life too. Bears are going to act like this, lions are going to act like this, wolves are going to act like this, and so again we'll have a range, and it won't be just all lions have just this one set of 10 abilities, but we have kind of an idea after fighting lions for a while that this is kind of what they do, and they might have their own augments to go along with that, but even just fighting that one, we begin to learn how that one fights, but we shouldn't be doing a lot of mob respawning in that sense either, like in typical MMORPGs where you can kill the Thessalon 50 times in a row, and everything that the Thessalon could possibly do, because he always comes back. Or what's the other? Fippy Darkpaw. I don't want Fippy Darkpaw.
I was trying to remember his name for the life of me the other day. So I guess one of the other things, though, is I really hope that the agency of the AI actually lets them fight in a realistic way. Like, if you're second or third lion to get to the thing, you're going to be just kind of like grazing at it. You're going to be kind of coming in and swiping and biting a bit and stuff. But I absolutely hate it when I'm fighting like a wolf or a lion or something in one of these games, and it's just sitting there grazing on my crotch and maybe taking a swipe with its paw every now and then. That's not how they'd attack. They freaking jump on you. They knock you down and bite your throat. They slash at you. That's what they do. So if I'm fighting a lion in Ashes, that damn thing better knock me down. And if I resist and it doesn't knock me down, I better get the hell out of there. None of that standing there. Oh, well, I'm aggroed on you, so now I'm just gonna kind of go chomping on your nuts until I potentially die, or you stab me in the back to death because I'm just sitting here, like that.
Right, and that's kind of an interesting thing to think about. Hopefully, just like we don't have auto attack, maybe they shouldn't have auto attack. Maybe they were trying to hit their own combos, and so maybe they have a primary attack, but they're doing a range of things. But again, yeah, it shouldn't be just the same two things. And again, hopefully they have augments and all kinds of stuff, changing up their repertoire.
Now I'm a fire-breathing lion. Yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do with more magical beasts and creatures and stuff like that. And I would imagine the tougher areas of the game.
Mm-hmm. What else? Can we do one more topic, or we have to go?
Oh, I mean, we could. The other thing that was kind of the last couple of days, there was a post about what was it? The idea, cash shops in a game that is a monthly fee game. Which I guess the argument was, should that be done? Is that too much? Which I think we've actually talked about.
Is it only for aesthetics?
Well, in the context of Ashes, so yeah.
Yeah. So for me, my stance is always, I don't like that it's there unless part of your monthly subscription also gives you some sort of, credit towards a wallet to buy these things. If my, $15 a month or whatever gets me $5 worth of, cash shop currency to do whatever I want with, then yeah, I am totally down with that system. Do it big time, make a whole ton of money. But short of that, and yeah, you're already making your passive income off of not only the people playing, but the people not playing who are just still paying. You don't need to be milking them with the aesthetics too. That's my stance.
Yeah. I think I don't mind it. I think it depends on what's in there. It depends on how it's done. I think I kind of did something like that with Wizard 101. I'd be willing to purchase pets and sometimes purchase costumes. But I'm afraid with Ashes, I mean, it's not supposed to be pay to win, but I think Steven does stuff that's just as bad as pay to win. So,
I mean, as long as it doesn't influence, competitiveness within the game, if it's just a cosmetic item, I would prefer also that everything be obtainable in game. If it's in the cash shop, you can also somehow get it within the game. But I can understand it takes a lot of money to keep content flowing, and one thing that kills MMORPGs is when they don't have content. So, I mean, for me, it's I'm not going to buy it anyway. Any of the cosmetic stuff, anyways. The greater question that still hasn't been answered is just whether or not you can sell those cosmetic items as in-game items. So if I can purchase something through the cash shop, turn around and sell it for game currency in the game, then I have a bigger problem. But as long as those things aren't the case, okay. They need money to go. That's fine.
and I guess I would have to see, what the price point is, because I think we had issues with that with Landmark. There would be a costume, and then the color for the black costume would be outrageously high.
Yeah, it'd be extra expensive.
Like, why? Why am I paying that much for the color black?
That was always the thing I didn't like, is just let us get the template and then sell us the dyes if you have to. But that's I was not a fan of that.
And I used to think that we sort of had to, because subs were so hard to come by. But that actually we seem to be reversing to some degree. I mean, World of Warcraft's still going strong. think Final Fantasy reported some really strong numbers too.
Final Fantasy's going strong. Eve's going strong.
So,
yeah, I mean, there's still definitely subscription games that are, it's a thing, and the fact that it's coming back, I was surprised that no one ever did the intermediary where it's a subscription-based MMO, but it's like $5 a month instead of 15 or something like that.
So, well, anything else y'all have in mind? Anything you want to talk about?
I think it's time to wrap up. So we could probably do another hour if we wanted to, but
Overly dynamic AI-driven agency combat is tiring, though. Takes a lot of energy. Yeah, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Well, that becomes my sort of thing, careful what you wish for. I mean, how many people, once there's some sort of intelligence to, essentially all combat, how much are they going to really want to put up with that?
well, the thing that I always say is that once the AI gets to start acting as ruthlessly as humans do, I'm not playing because, I hate PvP because humans are assholes and I don't want to play that. So once the NPCs start acting like that, I probably won't be playing MMORPGs anymore.
I would just love to see the first time someone, you come upon a group and you have 4 orcs and you kill 3 of them, one runs away, you don't really care about it, but you didn't know that over the hill is like a big city of orcs, and then they come running back at you because the AI is so advanced. It's sort of
I think that'd be great.
Well, some people would, but
serves me right. Also, now I know where their orc city is.
But at the same time, it'd have to be careful. Although, again, assuming they keep pulling a lot from EverQuest Next, the idea with that was to tune it up and down, right? So they would have had a way to make things easier or harder.
Yeah, I mean, what I liked about EverQuest Next is that they would actually be going through a range of emotional states. So, some could be afraid of you, some could be suspicious of you, some could be angry with you. I think my favorite was the shopkeeper who becomes jealous of you because you've talked to his wife once too often. And then what does he do? Does he, lie to the guards and say you stole something, or does he just try and kill you outright himself? Does he raise his prices? Those are the types of things that I would love to see AI eventually get to reacting to you differently based on your interactions with them, because their emotional state changes. But we're not going to get that with Ashes, so.
I would hope to just have some sort of system where the encounters were different, a little different each time. It wasn't always the same. You know what you're coming for. I watched a YouTube video. If we could at least advance AI and MMORPGs to that stage, I think that would be probably a big step. But all right, well, we are out of time and not really out of topics, but we'll be back in 2 weeks. Hopefully at this point. How often do they do their Twitch streams? I thought it was it's not every 2 weeks. Is it every month?
I thought they were hoping for every 2 weeks, but we did not get one today. Yeah. So hopefully we'll get one in the next week or so.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you again in 2 weeks.
Yep. See you then, everybody. Have a good one.